right, so I gave him 48 hours, and I said I'm not going to tweet at Struddy. I'm not going to text Struddy. We're not going to ask Struddy to come on because I know he's mourning. I know he's from Edmonton. He's an Oiler alumni. He wanted to see them win, of course. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I know we have a history of doing that, bothering Strud when they've lost 3 in a row, 5 in a row, when they fire a coach. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that because that would be cruel. He's not thinking about us. We're not thinking about him. Then sure enough, 1 minute ago on Twitter, because the Leafs announced Brad Treliving's doing a press conference this afternoon at 6 p.m., Struddy quote tweets and tags OverDrive and says, press conference time, exclamation point, because that's his big thing. That's all we do in Toronto is have press conferences.
I forgot that.
That's his chirp. That's all we do. The teams don't win here. Nothing positive happens here, but all they do is run press conferences. I figured this guy would be in mourning for like at least a week. It took him less than 48 hours to get up off the mat.
End of the day, we won as much as they did out there in Edmonton.
That's true. Wow. That's true. I guess you're right. There's no cup anywhere north of the 49th, which would include in Toronto and in Edmonton. And it is glaring. Yeah, there it is. You can see it up on TSN Plus.
He just wrote his own invitation to come on tomorrow.
Yeah, we might have to get Struddy on because he's looking forward to this Treliving press conference. They do.
You know what? He has the comment, and I do too. They win every press conference. They do, because they say the right things. You know what I mean? I would have liked McDavid to say, "I've been in this league 9 years," and the Nathan McKinnon. Mm-hmm. I thought about it yesterday. When's the last time Austin Matthews got pissed off in a press, other than yelling at Steve Simmons about, the COVID comment or something? Remember, he was mad at Sid.
Yes, he was mad about that. Yes.
Outside of that, he's never been pissed off and been like, I don't care about 69 goals. I don't care about this and that. It's just
the whole lot of them. The whole lot of them. You're right, Noodles.
When's the last time they've been pissed off about the actual results of something, other than just trying to not have clickbait or not have that quote that everybody pulls on?
I think that's a very valid point, and I think it's something that this is where the Maple Leafs, I think, overthink everything. Is their concern is the clickbait. We don't want to say anything where I think that is actually detrimental to them. I think they would get people back on their bandwagon so quick, and people would greatly appreciate showing that emotion, assuming it's there.
Genuine.
Yes,
right?
exactly. I'm assuming they're dying to win. Of course, I think every pro athlete wants to win, and I understand that that's out of your comfort zone, and that's not really the way they operate. But I remember us talking about that during the season. I think we asked Willie about that after he signed. They never talk about the Stanley Cup here. It's like this forbidden comment. It's Voldemort. You can't say it. Yeah, never. Just don't say that. Just talk about process and learning lessons and being real close. Just say it. Just admit. Just say, we haven't won the cup, and the only thing we care about is that. Don't talk about contracts. Don't talk about who's on your wing. Anything. Just embrace the fact that you have to win. That's what I want.
I know one person that might change that. The coach.
You think Craig Berube will drop the mic early on and say, this is our objective and we're going to embrace it?
Okay, so I played with him. When I see him, we have chats. He's been on our show. With Craig Berube, what you see is what you get. So there's probably going to be some times this year where we're not going to like his press conference because he just shoots from the hip and goes, hey, I'm not talking about this, or I'm not, this is none of your business, or whatever. He's going to be chippy. But what you're going to get is honesty from Craig. So he might start the season going, I don't care what you guys make or what's going on here. We're trying to win a Stanley Cup, and that's all you're going to talk about this year. I feel like if there's some person that is going to change that look or maybe the attitude or the way people speak, we've already seen 8 years of the other guys.
Yes.
I think it's going to be Craig Berube that opens that door and says, this is what we do here. This is what I want our group to do here. Mm-hmm. I might be wrong in that.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, because I think there's this nervous energy about the market, about the reaction, and I think about opening yourself up to punchlines. And everyone's got them when it comes to the Leafs. Oh, there's the Leafs. They never, and it's pretty glaring when you see the Canadian teams who have been in the Cup final since that '93 team. The Habs have won it. Vancouver's been there twice. Edmonton's been there twice. Montreal's been there. Calgary's been there.
Vancouver,
Ottawa's been
Ottawa,
there.
Ottawa, yeah.
It's only Toronto and Winnipeg didn't have a team for 20 years. It's glaring. Like the Leafs have not even joined that club where they can go up on the board as being a part of the heartbreak of losing in the Cup final. That's your history. It is what it is. Rewrite it. And yeah, I'm with you, Noodles. Like I'd love to see that a mic drop. Like screw it, man. I don't care about anything else. This is it. We're sick of it, and we're going to do it. And go for it.
Nobody's saying it, guys. Guess what's not on their mind? That.
Right.
Sorry. Everyone could say, oh, yeah, we got this or that. But if nobody's saying it, it's not on anybody's mind. And that's just the truth of it.
I look at these speeches, and obviously when Berube got hired in Toronto, his Stanley Cup speech before Game 7 in Boston, it was played 150 times, right? Like just everywhere it was. And he was like, hey, we're winning the Cup tonight. Like he flat out, and sometimes people don't like saying that word, right? Like, it's like, hey, it's unwritten. You don't say these things. You don't talk about it. Where he went the other way and said, hey, we're coming home with the Cup tonight.
Yeah. Let's go get it, man.
Exactly. That's that's why I think he might have a little different approach here in Toronto.
I sure hope so. Here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. How you doing, Dregs?
Oh, boys, it's hot. It's hot. I'm in an Uber. I'm going from one hotel. Normally if you're a kilometer away or less, you're not taking an Uber, right? You're just walking it off.
Right.
It's 42 degrees Celsius and climbing.
Is it like trade deadline day where you just throw your undershorts in the garbage, Dreg?
It's a dry heat. A dry heat. What I should do, though, is because I was described as portly on a street in Edmonton during the Stanley Cup final.
Why would you bring that up, Dregs? Like, I don't know why. That hit a nerve, but why would you even...
Who said that?
So it was a young couple, and I'm walking to the rink in shorts and a T-shirt, whatever. It was an off day. They stop and ask if they can take a picture. I'm like, yeah, sure. And the young guy turns and he says, hey, you know what? Don't be offended by this, but I didn't realize you were that portly.
Oh, my God.
And man. I said, yeah, well, you know what? You're effing ugly. How's that?
Wow, that stink. Portly's that's like a Mark Twain word. Like Portly's. Yeah, that's you put tough thought into that one, man. Portly's.
Dude, do you know how many times I got stopped and it was well deserved, not too long ago. It's like, hey, O-Dog, like you're way fatter in person than I ever imagined.
It's so ignorant. Like it's such an
so
ignorant
tough.
Can I get a pic, though? I love you, man.
And they would follow it like, you actually kind of look good on TV, but you're way fatter in real life than I ever thought. And it's like, what a comment to say to a stranger.
Wow. And according to that comment, so back to Vegas in the heat, what I should probably do is sit in a lawn chair with a turkey baster and a gallon of butter and try and drop about 25 lbs in 24 hours.
I like it. Well, okay. If you're moving around, and I guess the whole league has arrived now, and it feels like it's go time. And we're seeing Brad Treliving will be speaking with the media, doing a press conference in about an hour from now. Do you expect to get answers from him? Like, I guess the Marner question is going to come up. What do you think he would say, or what he will say in an hour when he gets asked about it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Is he going to take cheap shot at recent reporting? I don't know. I don't think he's going to dive too deep into it. He's learned that the world around the Toronto Maple Leafs is a world of sometimes wild speculation. So beyond that, I don't know what his comfort level is. But what I can tell you is that really there's been no change in any of this. There really hasn't been. As far as Brad Treliving is concerned, his focus is more on what he's got right in his face right now, right? And he knows that he needs to beef up his blue line. He'd like to add 2 right-shot defense. Well, is he going to be able to do that by adding maybe 1 right-shot defenseman from the market in either Matt Roy or Pesci's probably too expensive? What if you give a bit longer term to Chris Tanev and pull him away from the Dallas Stars negotiations? I mean, that's more of his focus. But you're right, he'll be pushed on Marner. And I think that all scenarios remain in play, but not front burner. So the messaging would probably be, and this is my sourcing on this, look, Marner is looking forward to playing for Craig Berube. Craig Berube is looking forward to coaching Mitch Marner. But that does not prevent the manager from having trade-related conversations. Certainly doesn't prevent the manager from talking about what the framework of an extension might look like if he happens to come across Darren Ferris here in Vegas. But I can tell you that meeting between Ferris and Treliving isn't planned. So it'll be more about the same around Marner, I would expect.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I mean, the money is all a part of it, as we know, and we've discussed this countless times, and we'll continue to discuss it. But you mentioned Pesce, like if he's looking at, I don't know, $6 million plus, if that gets too rich for the Leafs, like what? I guess they have to work under the guidelines that Marner and 10.9 are going to be on the books. Like if Pesce's too expensive, then that would suggest they don't have as much money as some people want them to have, which maybe that gives us an answer on what their plan's going to be moving forward.
Could be. It absolutely could be. And how much bargain shopping are you going to be able to do when some of those top guys tick off the board, right? Look, I mentioned Tanev. I mean, Dallas is still trying to work their magic and keep him there. And I think that Tanev would like to stay in Dallas, but he's also at the end of his career or near the end. But he has value. And what does that value look like in term and in dollars? Dallas and Texas, they've got the advantage with the tax system. So if you really want Chris Tanev, then you're going to have to pay in term. And that's where it gets dicey. But I can also understand why a team would do that. If you're not worried about burying a guy in long-term injury in year 4, 5, 6, then what does it matter? If that's a guy that you covet and you think you can get him, that makes good management sense to me. And I'm using Tanev as an example. What's LA going to do with Matty Roy? What about Vincent Desharnais? That coming out of the Stanley Cup final. Brad Treliving loves the big trees, as he likes to refer to him, and Desharnais, the big tall tree back there. So there are some other options that could be, more sensitive to the salary cap.
Darren, with Bertuzzi and Domi, would you just expect them to go to market since nothing's done as of now? Yeah,
that's the way it looks right now, for sure. And to be honest, I haven't circled around the Domi camp just yet, but it sounds like he's pretty rigid in what he thinks he can get on the open market. Lots of interest around Tyler Bertuzzi, and I don't think that anyone is surprised by that. But that's not to say that Toronto doesn't feel like they're still in it. Toronto just can't pay what these two players are demanding. If somebody is out there that is willing to step up, in the 5.5 range or higher for Tyler Bertuzzi, well, then that's not going to be a fit for the Maple Leafs, unfortunately.
Dregs, how wild is things going there right now? Like, is this the norm, or do you feel like it's a little bit ahead right now of what we've seen in past years before free agency? I mean, behind the scenes, you always feel like there's maybe the nudge, nudge, wink, wink collusion type of thing going on, but is it another level this year, or is it pretty much status quo, same? I just feel like there's more things happening maybe this year than we've seen in past years.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it does have more of a feel to it. Speculation in this time of year is always there, but I think because the Stanley Cup was handed out, on Monday night, June 24th, that has elevated it, right? I mean, God, we had a major trade between the Boston Bruins and the Ottawa Senators announced during warm-up of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and while the league didn't like it, I can understand and appreciate why these clubs did it. I mean, again, it's the 24th of June. So now you fast forward to where we are today and free agency right around the corner. And as much as the league probably isn't going to invest a whole lot of time in trying to find evidence of, say, tampering, come on. We talked about this last week. We know what's going on. So probably what happens on July 1 is, as soon as you can start rolling out these contracts, there's going to be a flood of them, right? It's going to be one after another, after another, after another. Well, they didn't get all that work done magically in the morning of July 1st. So that might speak for itself. I don't foresee the NHL doing anything about it other than maybe drifting out a memo that says, hey, we catch you. We're going to hit you hard to send a message.
Darren, I'm not sure if you've heard Draisaitl's comments today, but it seemed like pretty standard stuff. Is that what you were basically expecting to hear out of him?
Exactly what I was expecting. And out of respect to the Edmonton Oilers media, they left Leon Draisaitl alone on the contract front pretty much all season long. So that's why he had to answer basically the same question probably 4 times, right? But I thought he handled it very, very well. And I can appreciate the position of Draisaitl. I think he loves playing in Edmonton and has a deep, respect for his teammates and getting Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. But he's going into the final year of his deal. If no different than Marner, he decides to dig in and says, you know what, I don't really want to negotiate an extension. I'm just going to try and play it out. I can understand why he would not want to do that with the open market looming. That doesn't mean the Oil have to sit tight on him, but imagine what comes after, a Leon Draisaitl trade, if that's what the Oilers' new hockey operations department is left with. Because then you have McDavid coming and Evan Bouchard. Like it's similar to the Toronto Maple Leafs and how the dominoes could fall in Edmonton.
Can you picture a scenario where Edmonton would trade Draisaitl this summer?
No, not this summer, but I mean, it's a tough predicament though, isn't it? Right? Like, he basically said that he just hasn't had time to digest anything. So at least at this point, he's going to wait. But at some point prior to training camp, I do believe that Jeff Jackson and whomever is also a big part of hockey operations, we know it won't be Kenny Holland, is going to have to put some heat on Andy Scott and Leon Draisaitl and just lay out the scenarios. As a small market club, you're never going to replace Leon Draisaitl, but you certainly can't walk him out the door for free, right? So that's going to be a real tough challenge for Jackson and company. But I'm not convinced that isn't going to be the position that Leon Draisaitl takes, where he simply says, nah, I'm not interested in talking about a contract yet to start the season. Maybe at some point as the season progresses, but not now. And then that's where the gamble begins. Yeah,
exactly. Then it's Tavares 2.0, and maybe he signs at the end of next season anyway. Like maybe it doesn't matter. But if it's just, hey, I'll let you know like next year, that's a totally different
weird,
ballpark.
Would Pasternak be a comparable?
Yep. Yeah, he would be.
Just thinking out loud here, because we talked Tavares, but Pasternak went the whole year without a deal.
But were they not negotiating, though? Like, was there not an understanding Pasta wanted to stay, though? Like, I thought he made
number,
it.
Right?
Yeah, it was like, all right, let's hash this out. Like, I believe in my number. You better pay it. Where if Draisaitl's just don't talk to me, I'll let you know. That's different. Like, that's a very different scene.
But Brian, that's the way it could play out as well. Mm-hmm. Like, and maybe that's the way that Leon wants to go with this, right? Like, just because the player doesn't want to necessarily be involved in the day-to-day, that doesn't prevent Andy Scott and Jeff Jackson from having continued conversations. And you're bang on with the Pasternak situation. I mean, J.P. Barry believed in his client. His client, David Pasternak, believed in himself. The Bruins didn't want to pay him because they felt like they had their own kind of human salary cap there in what they already had. And they didn't want to blow the budget on Pasternak until they had no choice. So maybe that's the direction Leon goes.
Well, the other thing, too, I'll slide on this, Dregs. Boston market, a lot different than Edmonton market. I'm sure it was noisy there. It'll be noisy times 300 in Edmonton. Right? If it's like, hey, we're dragging this out, or hey, we believe we'll get it done, but it's not, because there's going to be rumblings from behind the scenes going, this guy, I heard this, my cousin's brother's uncle said this, and it'll get way noisier if they don't manage that situation.
Don't you think that everyone's linking 97 to this too? Like, isn't that a part of it as well?
Got to be connected somehow.
Exactly. Right? Like, if Draisaitl's out of there, what happens with the next guy?
100%. And another step in that process, I think they have a do-over. They'd probably handle the whole coaching change situation in Edmonton differently. Not to say that they weren't going to fire Jay Woodcroft and bring in Chris Knobloch, but Connor basically got blindsided by all of that, right? And that was a pretty big misstep. So you can be certain that McDavid is going to be informed of everything as that negotiation with Leon continues.
With Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider. So it is June 26th. What is Steven Stamkos thinking right now?
Well, he's probably wondering where the offers are and if the reality is that he's going to open market. I know Pierre LeBrun is going to touch on that as part of our segment in Insider Trading on SportsCenter. I got to tell you, I'm surprised if that's the direction that this thing goes. I understand, the cap crunch because so many teams have to contend with that. But you're talking about an iconic figure here and a guy who's coming off, what did he score, 40 times this past year? Look, make it intriguing for him. We talked about the possibility of a team like Toronto or Ottawa giving Chris Tanev an extended term, a term beyond what their comfort normally would be, just to get the player because they need the player now. You don't worry about what he's going to look like in 4 or 5 years from now. Wouldn't that apply to Steven Stamkos? It doesn't make sense to me. But what I know is if Tampa Bay doesn't find a way to circle back and make it worth his while to stay, they're not going to have a hard time finding a home for Stamkos.
No, that's for sure. What a scene that'll be, man. If he gets there, Reinhart, Montour, like Reinhart scored, 54 goals, 57 goals this year?
Yeah.
There's some big names, big defensemen. The goaltending carousel continues. To say nothing of contract negotiations. Like we mentioned with Marner, Draisaitl, and Rantanen, the same thing, right? Like Rantanen can sign an extent. Colorado wants to do that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, all right, Dreg, stay cool down there. Appreciate you doing this.
No problem. I've got Ryan Rishaug walking with me with one of those enormous fans.
Beautiful.
So he's like Puffy to me. Sean Cameron, Puffy to James Duffy.
Yeah.
This fluffer, that's what Rishaug is.
I love it. I love it, man. Just look at you two just cruising down the strip in Vegas, putting on a show. Enjoy yourselves.
He's looking at me right now, not happy, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, boys, take care.
Darren Dreger joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, that Stamkos story it's a different beast.
That's
when you get closer to July 1st, man. Exactly. Like we were talking about 2 months ago. We're like, they'll figure it out. A month ago, you got time now. You're like, man, this guy, if they haven't signed him by now, are they going to pick up the phone and call him on June 30th and say, let's knock this out? Well, seems kind of disrespectful to do that.
I think it's, if he wants to stay and everyone out of there saying the right things, he's a captain there for life and all of that, and he's a Tampa Bay Lightning player for life, then you're going to have to give him a long-term deal where, he scored 40 last year at 3 is he coming? Mm-hmm. So he plays a 34-year-old. It's a 7-year deal to walk him right to 40. If you got to get that AAV down, if you want to put money in his pocket. Like that's real, because I don't know if anybody else is going to offer him a 7-year deal on a free agent market. Would you?
That's a good question. I don't think so. And it may be a scenario where he's willing to take one for the team where they're going to do their work on July 1st, and then whatever's left, they're going to say, here you go if you want to stick around. But that
but he's going to say, I don't deserve that. I just scored 40 cookies, and I'm still a big part of the team.
Right.
So that's the balancing act where it's like, he wants to play there. He's been the captain there. He's brought championships there. Yeah. So it's just going to be, excuse me, I know, Hayes, you mentioned, it was not that long ago you mentioned, even after his 40-goal seasons, where this might have to be some type of Bergeron-type contract, where it's $2.5 million, but he's going to say, screw you. And that's where there's the give and take, where it's like, okay, well, if Tampa's position is going to be, this is what we can pay you, and this is what we're thinking. We're not going to look at the 40 goals, which seems unfair. And if it's a situation where Stammer thinks he's going to hit a home run with Tampa, they're probably saying it can't happen here.
Well, the only problem is this Bergeron was 36. Like, Stamkos is going to play as a 34-year-old this year.
Okay, so we're talking about 2 years. It's not that great a difference. And Bergeron was still a great player. It's not like he was stiff.
That's the thing. Like,
I don't know. Yeah. I don't think they can ask him to go, hey, here's a 3-year deal at 2.5. Like, I think it's something like 6 or 7 a year times 6 years.
Ooh. Which, yeah, I mean, listen, what I'll say is if they walk off that, that is a really ballsy play, and I actually have great appreciation for it. I think it would suck for Stamkos. I think it would suck for that storyline, but it would speak to Tampa being ruthless, uber competitive, and just saying, sorry, our resources are going somewhere else. Thank you for 16 years, 2 cups, the best player of all time down there, number in the rafters.
40 goals out of your lineup's a lot. I'm not saying he's going to score 40 this year, but it's a lot of goals coming out of the lineup.
I'm telling you, I would put money in they get it done.
I would think they probably do too. But
this is a team that is very resilient. Julien Brisebois is an unbelievable general manager. Yes, he's been ruthless, but also, they are. Kucherov shows up at the after in the playoffs. Like they've been very, smart using the CBA. So I guarantee you they will find something to make him stay and make it worth his while, but still be team friendly somewhere. And if not, if Dregs was just talking about managers using term, not money, but term to lure players. That's where I think the currency is we'll kick the can down the road, and if you have to go on LTIR, when you're 38, 39 or 40 or whatever, we'll do it because we still want this player X in the mix right now. I think that's what managers are thinking.
Yeah, and I could see that playing out there for sure. He's been in the league 16 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and he's a great player. He's a great player, and he's still putting up great numbers. Like we said, 40 goals and 81 points. That's just an unbelievable season. It's deep into the offseason for them, and there's still no contract for him. So we'll see where he's at on the first. To say nothing of other guys that we're well aware of, like Connor Brown, he's a free agent. And as the season went on, he really improved. He had a great playoff.
Yeah.
And Connor said, he wants to stay in Edmonton, which I found really interesting that he just laid that on the line. Like, basically, I love Edmonton. This is where I want to be. It's been awesome for me.
So did Janmark. Janmark, I thought, I read his transcript. He said, I only had 12 points this year, but I had a good playoff. And he said, I don't think I'm going to have massive money out there, and I would like to stay. It'd be interesting. I thought Janmark looked like a really nice find for them.
It's tough to say anything other than that. It's the end of the season. You just had a great run.
Yeah.
I think some guys, it's not to say that they're lying, but everyone's going to say, I'd love to say.
It's you're saying it's like the Aggies coach, the Texas A&M guy?
No, it's not quite that, but it's just saying we had you're trying to put a positive spin, saying I'd love to stay.
Could you see the Leafs?
It's like a stock answer.
Could you see the Leafs sniffing around Connor Brown?
He's an unrestricted free agent.
UFA.
UFA.
Well, the
UFA.
way he played the last 2 months of the season, and you look at what Ottawa needs again, you would think that they might be sniffing around to bring him back there. If they want that grizzled guy that can play defense and a different level of commitment and all the things, the intangibles, you would have to think the Ottawa Senators would have him circled as a guy they'd want to bring back there.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Toronto, the right side is jammed up. That's the only thing. If Yarncroke is
still here,
healthy, right?
Yeah.
He had a 4-year deal, so you got 3 years left on him. So you have Marner, Nylander, Yarncroke. And then, like that, you got to figure out the left side. And, the left side as far as where Bertuzzi. And if Domi is a centerman or a winger, like those two spots.
Yeah, the left side more, like Nyes, is a part of the program.
Top 6 for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 6 guy. I don't think you're penciling in Easton Cowan at this point, not up the lineup. So, yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense. But
I think O makes a good point. A guy like Connor Brown, I think the Ottawa Senators need veteran guys who can play. Like not veteran guys that are just good in the room. They need veteran guys that can play. Brown might be a guy, but he also might want to stay in Edmonton.
I could see him wanting to stay in Edmonton.
Come back. He was a big part of the program. And, they took a chance on him, too.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Let's not lose all of that. There might be some loyalty there,
Well, he did say, last year he was still rehabbing. This year he'll be training, and that goes a long way as well in terms of how he can start next season.
Yeah.
All right, role play level of concern still to come. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN Plus.
You can never ask me to stop drinking. Do you understand?
Role Play Level of Concern brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Summer's short, so make sure you make the most of patio season at BP. Join us for a long lunch or a late night and see you for a pint on the patio soon. I love that. Pint on the patio happens to be an option in Role Play Level of Concern. If you have absolutely no concern, you go to Boston Pizza for a pint on the patio. If you have huge amounts of concern, that would be Nick Cage and Leaving Las Vegas, and then everything in between. Stevie Caldwell, Rick Bushwood, Wade Buggs at a Lightning game. I mean, there's so many different options. All right, you're playing the role.
I knew I was first, and I knew I'm just going to get a friggin' doozy. So
Well,
go ahead.
I
I
think
do
this
every
is-
week.
I think this is reasonable because we always talk about this angle from a fan perspective, media perspective, ownership, management perspective. You are playing the role of the hockey players on the 7 Canadian hockey teams. What is your level of concern this Canadian Cup drought will continue for a long time?
I'm Stevie Caldwell.
A couple of whiskeys and 5 or 6 beers.
Well, is
Because
that not
that's
worried, or-
just-
Yeah, exactly. What is that? For a Scotsman, that's like a pint on the
I don't
patio.
even know. We have to ask Stevie like what that even is for him as far as his own concern. That might be nothing,
Right.
right?
Yeah, that could be a tease to the night. Like that's a
But it's
pregame.
just
I
a
don't know.
casual evening where you're thinking, oh, maybe it might not happen. But at the end of the day, you've got a couple of the Canadian teams that are building towards something, which is Ottawa and Montreal. And the rest of them have pretty good teams that would have a chance, you would think, to win a cup in the next 4 to 5 years, wouldn't you? So I think you've got to be looking at it where it's like, we just have to get it done. We've got quality. Even that Vancouver team, like you throw that goaltender in there who's healthy and they keep building around what's there, you got to think they could do some damage one year or another. So it's just a Stevie Caldwell where it's, and by the way, none of these current players wear this. They're not responsible for the last 100 years or whatever the hell's been going on here.
It's nice.
They don't lie in bed at night thinking, oh, a Canadian team's got to get this done. They want to get it done for their own team, but they're not wearing this. I think it's just a Stevie Caldwell. And by the way, they're also not hazy B group thinking it where it's like one of us on these Canadian teams have got to get this done. Everybody obviously wants to win the Stanley Cup. And you've got 2 markets where there's McDavid in Edmonton, there's McMatthews in Toronto. All you can do is hope. So,
Do you not think they acknowledge it though? Like not wear it.
I don't. Honestly, I don't. I think they're so young where they're just like, we're trying to do what we do, and they walk away and they sleep well at night. And I just think that's just the way business is done these days.
Some guys are students of the game. Some guys aren't. That's the difference. There are guys who know the history of the game. Sidney Crosby, I guarantee you, is a student of the game. Nathan McKinnon, I believe, he looked and sounded like a student of the game. Did he not when we had him on a couple weeks ago? Or was that last week?
Correct. That is correct.
Like the other guys, there are guys that don't know anybody. Like literally, you mention a name from a previous generation. They're like, yeah, I'm not aware of that player.
I
So
played
it
with
just-
a guy who didn't know guys in the league currently while we were playing. He's like, I don't watch hockey. I don't know any of the guys.
Yeah.
I don't know what they
love
do.
it.
I don't know who hits.
Everybody's different. I will say, though, because people talk about it, I think it's somewhere in the middle because, Hayes, I think you pointed it out going into the playoffs. It's not like Canadian teams haven't made it to the final. Like, they've been there. It's Edmonton, it's Montreal.
Just
it's
happened
been
again. Game 7.
So how, if you look in the last 30 years or 31 years, whatever that drought is, there's teams, Canadian teams littered through it. It's not like there's zero chance that a team makes it to the finals. It's just getting over that hump. I'm still a little bit higher than, I believe, Stevie Caldwell. I know the question wasn't asked to me, but I'd be Rick Bushwood. Just because of the parity in the league. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and that's reasonable. And I guess what I'm asking, because I've never thought of it from that standpoint, like we talk about it endlessly as Canadians, as media, and I think it's like, how does ownership figure this out? Management. Like, and I know you think of your own team. No one's thinking collectively of 7 teams. But are there players saying, I don't know if we can win up here? Like, what is going on here? Like, how do we crack this case?
What does up here have to do with anything?
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, obviously there's a tax benefit. That comes up all the time. The Florida Panthers are paying Matthew Tkachuk $9.5. Calgary was going to have to pay him way more.
Calgary's the same. Calgary's the same tax situation as Florida. You know that, right?
Okay, but
From a state tax.
do you think he was staying there for 9.5? Like, I guess
No.
I hear what you're saying. I guess there's a tax thing, and some people say the tax, you can get around it. I don't know the answer to all that. But, Florida's been in the Cup final 5 years in a row.
Yeah,
Vegas,
state of Florida? Yes.
the state of Florida between Tampa and the Panthers. Vegas has been in the Cup final multiple times. I don't know. Like, I don't. Maybe that's a cop-out. Maybe that's a loser's comment.
I agree with that statement.
I don't think so. I just think it should be pointed out. That's what I was going to bring up with the Draisaitl negotiation. The one thing he has going for him is in Alberta, they're in a way better tax situation than any other province in the National Hockey League because they don't have that provincial tax, right? Like, sales tax in Alberta is like 5%. It's just the HST or whatever it's called. In Ontario, what is it? 13%.
13% or whatever.
It's different. So I don't know, man. I still think
gains. There's a lot of different things.
Well, this government, they can't get rid of them fast enough with the capital gains. But anyways, we'll talk about that later.
Right.
I think it's a more concern though.
Okay, I kind of agree with you. I mean, that said, Edmonton, it was 1-1 in the second period of Game 7. Like a couple bounces go their way, and this whole thing is over. It's teams can get there. You got to build it properly, but the players got to believe in themselves individually and as teams. All right, the draft going Friday night. We know who's going first overall. Noodles, you're playing the role of Macklin Celebrini, who is the presumptive first overall pick. He's going to San Jose. What's your level of concern? The Sharks are light years away from being competitive.
I'm not going to. That's a Rick Bushwood, I think, because it's
6 Busch Light, 6 Bud Light, and I love them, tall boys.
And add a couple on top of that too. I'm not Nick Cage, and here's why: because they got a bunch of money to spend, and you saw that they're starting to pluck guys. They got Goudreau off of waivers. Like, they're going to start spending money and trying to build their program out. But they do have a lot of work. So if light years is 5 years, it should have been Nick Cage. If light years is 10 years, I that's why I went with Rick Bushwood.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough to say because it historically has been a pretty good market, pretty good hockey market. But you look at, I was actually looking for some reason, I need a life quickly, at their projected lineup next year. And this is before free agency, obviously, and they'll add to it. But it's still really thin. I think next year, Noodles, they're still one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league.
I
they're
don't
horrendous.
disagree with you. I do not disagree with you.
But
it's the Chicago mold where they're going to get their guy and they're going to have to build the program out.
Right.
I don't know how long that's going to take.
Yeah, but if you have prospects, if you have flexibility, you can.
Right.
It doesn't have to take 5 or 6 years. Maybe it takes 2 or 3. Maybe.
Right.
All right, I'm playing the role of Aurelvis Martinez. What is my level of concern? This suspension will set my career back significantly. I'll go with it.
Come on, dude, it's Cage.
You think it's Nicky boy? You think it's Nick? Here's why I'm going to say it's Stephen Caldwell having pints and whiskey with Rick Bushwood.
A couple of whiskeys and 5 or 6 beers.
6 Busch Light, 6 Bud Light, and I love them, tall boys.
Doubled up?
Yeah, it's the 2 of them.
Fernando Tatis. This happened to Fernando Tatis.
Yes.
But he had the luxury of being a bona fide stud when that happened.
And he had been paid by then, which is even more important.
No kidding. He just had so many things in his favor where people can somehow, some way turn their head the other way and say, crap happens. This guy played 1 game.
Yes. Here's why it's not Nick Cage for me, because of the team he currently works for. They have no farm system here with the Jays. They have a terrible farm system by all accounts. One of the worst 7 or 8 in the league. They are so desperate for kids. I think a reckoning is coming here for the Jays. I think they need to unload a lot of pieces. I think they need to basically take a step or 2 back and reload the whole organization. And yes, Martinez has taken a hit. Now he's got to prove that he didn't just hit for power because he was taking PEDs. That's a big part of it too. Who are you? What are you now? Have you been doing this the whole time? How can you play clean? These are all legitimate questions, and he's got to answer them. And he's not going to play this year. But by spring training next year, if this team's turned a corner and they've decided we got to take a step back, his value, I think, is still going to be significant here. If he can't hit, if mentally he spins out of control, then that's a different story. But if he gets it back on the bases, so to speak, and he continues to hit and play and shows that he actually has talent, the Jays can't push him aside. Like, they feel burned, they got burned, but they're going to need this kid.
Right.
So I'm not quite Nick Cage. All right, moving on here. Oh, this is what we were talking about earlier this hour. You're playing the role of Steven Stamkos. I feel like every couple of months, Stammer comes up here on this show. You're playing the role of Steven Stamkos. What is your level of concern? The Lightning here are telling you maybe they want a breakup.
Dude, this is a pint on the patio if I've ever seen one. I'm Steven Stamkos, and I might have teams licking their chops to have me a part of their organization. If Tampa doesn't want me, I'll go somewhere else awesome and play, and I'll be great, and I'll help another team. Like, people get hyper-focused like this. They get tunnel vision like that's the only place to play. Yes, he does love it there. Yes, he is the captain there. Yes, he's brought 2 championships there. But there's 31 other teams in the league. And I'm sure a bunch of them would love to have Steven Stamkos. So he's looking at it. If you don't want to have me back, it's your loss. If you think Hagel and Nick Paul and these other guys are going to fill the void while I'm gone, go nuts. Fill your boots. Have at it. Because I scored 40 cookies last year, and that's out of your lineup. And if you want to live without it, go ahead.
Ooh, that's bold. I like that. I like that stance. Now, he's got that house in Tampa. It's on the water. He's got the Wave Runner down there. Kids and stuff.
The Wave Runner. He could buy the Wave like Struddy. He could buy the Wave Runner company.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He doesn't need to worry. He can retire there. That place is always going to be there.
Yeah.
If he wants to shoot off and experience something else for a couple years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever, he'll be more than happy to do it.
Yeah, but it has to be the right setting, though. Like I say, he could go and get $10 million.
But Jamie, he's not going to go. He's not going to go sign in some dumpster fire and say this is going to be fun for the next 5 years. He's not stupid.
Where do you think he would fit if he's not in Tampa? Let's say he's moving off Tampa. Where do you think Stamkos makes sense? Like, assuming he's making, let's say he gets $7 million a year on a 5-year deal. Like, let's just say that's it. 7 years, 5 year, or $7 million, 5 years. Who's taking him? Where does he want to play?
Boston.
Ooh. Yeah.
He could play center in Boston, right?
Feels like that ship has kind of sailed, him playing up the middle. Although it's, I mean.
But, you don't have to play.
Were pretty good
you don't
last
have
year.
to play center the whole time. You can slide to the wing, and, you can be versatile there. Boston will be in on that Lindholm, because they've got a decision with DeBrusque, right? Like, you've got to sign DeBrusque. Like, I think Boston will be very active. Like, you see them clearing some money. They cleared, Allmark's $5 million made it, Korpisalo's now at $3 million. So they cleared up $2 million there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll be a proactive team and looking for depth up front for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels like DeBrusque is going to move on. He's a pretty good player. Like, he's got pace. He's a lot of playoff success too. He's been a playoff performer. All right, we got some more role plays we'll scatter in throughout the afternoon here. Role play level of concern brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Summer is short, so make sure you make the most of patio season at BP. Join us for a long lunch or a late night and see you for a pint on the patio soon. Jack Armstrong on the NBA draft coming up. Our boy Stevie Caldwell. Well, we'll get you an update. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? 5 or 6 pints and a couple of whiskeys
and 5 or 6 beers.
What is that? Is that just a scene setter, or is that a big night? Yeah. We need a definition on that. So Stevie's coming up as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN Plus. All right, NBA draft tonight. Jack Armstrong will join us. Stephen Caldwell coming up. Best bets on the Jays game tonight. Shout out to George Springer, right? We've been tough on George. His stats haven't been great. He played well last night, had a few hits, a home run. Vladdy's been cooking, too, since that haircut. I'll say that. That haircut. He was playing pretty well prior to that, but
it was almost sad, the Springer.
I know. That's the thing.
It was like celebrating like some kind of double-A call-up or something. It was like, is this where we're at?
Yeah.
I did have that feeling.
You know what I mean?
He was so
it was
jacked.
almost sad.
I know.
It was like you were a great player.
Yeah, he was really jacked to hit that home run, which he should be. It's the major leagues. You're still a kid. You're playing a kid's game in many ways, but it did feel like he got that arm in the air like this. That was a playoff game where he hit a home run. I'm like, George,
Yeah, they're just trying to get to 500. They're trying to get to 500. Like it's a.
I don't know.
Man, oh man! Like it was a big win last night. I was happy
good for
Gausman
him.
And
Gausman pitched well, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you got yourself a win, right? There's no downplaying that.
Criticize the win, exactly.
Yeah, you're going to win games, but they're still in a pretty bad spot. And they're a pretty big dog on FanDuel tonight. We'll get to that game later this afternoon on our best bets. And Jack coming up, and Brad Treliving's going to speak in 10 minutes in Vegas. I don't expect anything. Like I don't expect him to say anything revealing. He hopefully will give you an update on the UFAs. Like he's going to get asked about Marner, I would presume. What's the latest on Mitch? My guess is it's a filibuster. Everything's on. We love our guys. I don't think he's not going to come out and drop a mic one way or the other today on Mitch Marner. I'd be shocked if he did. But if he was going to, the only answer he'd give you is we love Mitch and Mitch isn't going anywhere and he's a Leaf. Like that, and that would be massive news. Like if he decided to say that this afternoon, that's big news. Then there's no more speculation. It's over. That's where we're going. But I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe an update on Domi or Bertuzzi or Edmondson or Joseph Wall. So we'll see what he has to say ahead of the draft in a couple of nights. NBA draft tonight. And there's a lot going on in the NBA, including rumors that Kevin Durant wanted out of Phoenix and the Suns wanted him out. And now the Suns owner has jumped on Twitter and responded to that. We'll tell you about what he had to say or what he had to tweet. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN Plus.